nationalist came to power suddenly. Though perhaps only he felt it for certain, his emergence as an Arab leader of note began the day that Nasser died in 1970.
You know, we thought at one time this man will never die. And because we were in such a mess and we were humiliated and we were injured, we have put all our burden on the shoulders of Nasser. It was a great shock for me, really a great shock. I couldn't continue at that day.
Sadat as president faced many of the same problems which had existed at the time of the revolution. The British had long ago signed an agreement to leave Egypt, but there were still foreign troops on Egyptian soil. Since the June War of 1967, the Israelis had occupied virtually all of Sinai. Sadat knew he must deal with Israeli occupation, but first he moved to establish his credentials at home. After 18 years of relative obscurity, few Egyptians knew much about this man. Those who thought they did believed he was easily manipulated.
I think the most difficult time was when he took power and he discovered that he was surrounded by unfaithful lieutenants who tried to use him and to make him a stamp president, not a genuine president. And I think these people didn't know Sadat.
Sadat's first major crisis led to the purge of his opposition. An attempted coup led by the Vice President Ali Sabri failed almost as soon as it began. Sabri, seen here at his subsequent trial, was convicted and is still in prison. Also convicted were the Ministers of War, Interior, and Intelligence.
I am very patient. I'm still a villager. I'm very patient. But I never lose my target at all. I may be patient, but at the end, I fulfill my mission.
Sadat had appeared to encourage those who thought he could be used. During his first speech, he said he could not shoulder the burdens alone, and that he would continue the course set by Nasser.
The Egyptians love their little political jokes, and one favorite anecdote of mine was told shortly after Nasser's death and Sadat's succession, which is of President Sadat going out in the presidential car for a drive with the same chauffeur who had served President Nasser. And they come to a crossroads and the car stops. The chauffeur doesn't know which way to go and he turns for guidance to President Sadat. Which way? And Sadat thinks for a few minutes and says, well, which way did President Nasser go? Oh, he always went left. Very well then, signal left and turn right.
Having established himself firmly at home, Sadat faltered on the issue of Israeli occupation.
I think probably as a political leader, the most critical moment came in 1972, which he had designated as the year of decision, and he failed to produce a decision. At that time, the students were bitterly against him, complaining. There were jokes about him all over the Middle East. People were laughing at him, ridiculing him. The economy was going badly, and there was no hope, no prospect of improvement. And worst of all, Sadat's diplomatic initiatives had failed completely. He felt he wasn't getting any support from the United States for an Israeli withdrawal from Sinai. He was absolutely facing a dead end.
It was not my fault that I couldn't achieve this. I have agreed with the Soviet Union leaders about certain amounts of arms that would reach me before the end of the year. So, and they agreed, but they didn't fulfill. I lost a lot of my popularity, but still, the man of the street, I felt, as I told you, I feel it always, I felt that I have still the confidence of the man of the street. And then everything came on July 72 when I made my decisions to send out the Soviet experts.
Sadat's decision to expel the Russians was warmly received at home. Sadat hoped that when the Russians left, President Nixon would exert more pressure on Israel for withdrawal. One of his initiatives moved through unusual channels. The former child movie star, now diplomat Shirley Temple Black, was visiting Cairo. Sadat admired her and asked her to tea.
Well, near the end of our conversation, he said, I would like you to take a message from me to your president. And I said, I'll be delighted to. And he said, Shirley, please tell your president that I am the first Arab leader, the first leader in over 20 years to actively seek peace. And we want peace in this country. He was very forceful about this. He repeated it. And I said I would take the message back to the president.
Mrs. Black was unable to see President Nixon or any of his aides. Finally, she left the message with Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Woods. With no response, Sadat laid his plans for the October War. The world was surprised at Sadat's decisiveness. The Israelis were surprised, even though they had seen Sadat move boldly in the first 3 years of office.
You may say that every year since 71, Sadat has made one major political decision which was very bold, imaginative, and successful. In May 71, in one strike, he got rid of the top echelon of the Nasser's political structure. In July 72, he kicked out the Russians. In October 73, he launched an offensive against Israel, which at least managed to terminate the no peace, no war situation which had existed in Egypt, which had become unbearable, and gradually these type of decisions have changed his image in this country as well.
Sadat maintains that his diplomatic failures left him no choice but to fight.
It was aimed as a limited operation. The land was not my aim at all. I wanted only to prove to the whole world that the Israeli theory of security would collapse and we would cross the canal and we could capture the Barlef line. These were my aims.
Sadat himself was close to the campaign. During much of the fighting, he remained in the operations room. This is the first film ever allowed there, during a later briefing on troop status.
I was in the operation room and I received the reports one by one. The strong points of the Barlef line is surrendering and is captured. And after 4 hours exactly, about 6 o'clock, it was quite obvious that the Israelis has lost their balance. At that time, I told my people in the operation room, my forces, I told them, felicitations. The Israelis has lost their balance.
The war left Sadat as a world leader with whom other leaders had to contend. President Nixon came to call. Sadat was now critical to peace or war. Henry Kissinger trekked to his door. Sadat believes in Kissinger. The momentum for settlement in the Middle East has slowed, but Kissinger's stock remains high.
We have a very cordial relationship, and we have based it up to now on speaking very frankly with each other. He tries to explain to me what his concerns are. I try to explain what, in my judgment, is possible. And, of course, it is part of my job in these negotiations to explain the Israeli point of view.
The real question is, if he wants Israeli withdrawals, does he understand that there has to be a political price and that it cannot simply be a unilateral military action? In other words, can he stop thinking only of withdrawal and start thinking about peace, not only about what he wants from Israel, but what is